welcome to Shift. So I'm gonna give you a quick introduction, just very high level, who we are as a company, what we do, and I am going to introduce one of our products to you. So just a second, so I can show here. Actually. I'm having air parrot issues.
Anybody want to grab a last minute slice of pizza while Boris is just getting set up?
Now's your time. Pizza. Everybody.
In case you couldn't smell it. Not everybody has perfect nose.
I cannot hit an air parrot.
Air parrot?
Yeah, I just cannot hit it.
Oh, Aaron? Do you need me to disconnect? Can't open the air parrot.
Are you currently streaming there?
Let me just turn it off. I don't think so, but.
Worst case scenario, I'm gonna have you log onto the TV and you can hit my machine.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, this is.
All right, I turned AirPlay off. I can also disconnect from the Wi-Fi if that's helpful. Because I am connected as you. You know?
That should not be. I'm having a difficulty with this guy. Yeah, I cannot hit it. Could we try from your machine? I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine. Actually, I have a good. Do this. I'm going to email you this link, and then you can cast, and I'll put you up there.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Awesome.
We will make it work.
Yeah, I don't know why I can hit it.
All right. No problem.
Thank you for your patience.
All right. Hey!
So apologies for that. So here I have one of our newest products written in Ember for front end, so historically, Shift has been sort of a service-based company, or product as a service. So the requirements that we would satisfy for our clients were very flexible, and we had a proprietary application that is very flexible, and it is still running, and it is very important for our business. But it is written in Sencha Touch, and that is a framework that is not supported anymore. So we sort of had to reevaluate that product and see what we are going to do for the future. And so in that evaluation, Ember was the framework that won over any other framework. And in my opinion, that was awesome. So it took us probably a little over a year to get to this state. We had a team of probably 7 engineers. Some people have left the team since, but for the most part, I would say 85% of the team has been stable during that time. So we have a pretty good chemistry, and I personally really enjoy working with everybody on the team. We are agile, so we follow the agile methodologies. The process itself is evolving a little bit over time. So we have a product owner and a product manager on the team. We have 2 manual QA people. We have an automated QA engineer. We have a UX expert, a UI designer, and a data visualization expert who is also doing some UI concepts as well. In terms of history, I did talk a little bit about it. Framework specific, but one thing that we have done with this product is sort of revolutionize how we are dealing with satisfying the requirements for our clients. So this is a data visualization tool, and in the past we wrote a lot of code just to be able to set up structures on the front end, and then we wrote a lot of SQL code specifically that actually connected the SQL tables, did some sort of aggregations, and then exposed those on the front end. And anybody who has been working on those processes can tell you it is long. It could be error prone, and so on and so forth. And so what this product is doing is it's actually generating the SQL queries at runtime based on some metadata, and actually is able to display those data in a sets of visualizations. And we have also identified the concept that a given data set could be visualized in many different visualizations if it fits certain criteria. So we are seeing huge benefits in terms of our tech stack. The number of SQL objects that we are maintaining is much smaller. So the only backend asset is really, or two main concepts are the aggregate tables and sort of the metadata structures that allow you to write complex queries. So I have a screen up with a bunch of visualizations. Just a disclaimer: this is dummy mock data, so there is no sort of valid aggregation relationship between 2 things. So just bear that in mind, or keep that in mind. One cool thing, one of my favorite concepts here is that we can go to full screen, and then we can sort of modify how we consume the data. We can apply a filter, which will issue a query request to the backend, and backend will respond to it, hopefully a little bit faster than this. That's really slow. So typically it is not this slow, I promise you. So I seem to be having network issues. I apologize. So that I don't really hold this up much longer. We have been utilizing Ember fully for this product. We are also utilizing Ember for several other products that were built in-house. And so clearly we like Ember. Another thing that is important for me to share with you, again, apologizing for the bumpy internet connection and whatnot. I was sort of asked by Jen to share what I like about the company and something special that I truly enjoy here. And I would really say it is the opportunity to be innovative and to write code that is actually enjoyable to write. So many of you have probably have been on teams where you just sort of get a requirement and you have to satisfy it. Maybe you turn your brain off completely when it comes to thinking about how to solve a problem using your imagination and whatnot. And so the thing that I really like about Shift in particular is that you're sort of encouraged to use your imagination to solve problems, to go the extra step. You might get a set of requirements, but nobody is sort of expecting you're going to read those and say, okay, let me go bang that out. You're sort of encouraged to sort of ask questions and poke holes. And the idea is that together, the team that's composed of engineers, designers, and business consultants and analysts can come with a more cohesive solution to whatever problem we are trying to solve. So I'm going to step off, and before I do so, I would like to also share the fact that we are hiring. So if you are interested in learning more about Shift, please don't hesitate to ask any of us here who are current Shift employees. We would be more than happy to share our experiences here, and obviously have a great time. Thank you very much.
All right, fantastic. Just so we know who everybody is who's with Shift, can the Shift employees in the room please put your hand up? Oh, that's a lot of Shift employees. Cool. All right. You guys all outnumber people. Cool. Okay. So my name is Lenny. I will be your MC for the evening, which means I will just be introducing Jen and then getting away real fast once we get the airplay working. So welcome to Ember.js. Thanks. Okay, cool. And welcome to the how do you? Oh no. Okay, here we go. There we go. Now I've got it. So welcome to the Open Source Contributors Workshop. I'm your MC, Lenny, and please remember to tip your server on the way out. Before I get started, two things. One, is it germane to ask if we do that sort of hand up with like who's hiring, who's looking for work?
That's a great thing to do.
Okay. So anybody who's looking for work right now in the community, like raise your hand. I'm not just raising it because I'm trying to encourage solidarity. I'm raising it because I am looking for work. People who are hiring or are adjacent to some kind of hiring or are like have heard somebody complaining that, oh God, we need to find somebody who can do this thing. Like now. Put your hand up, please. Oh, there's several. Okay, I saw some hands. You have to be very quick to see those hands. They were there somewhere. Yeah, so if you who are looking might want to meet up with those who are hiring or know of hiring, that would probably be a really good idea. I might say, like, if you don't do anything else tonight, do that, but tonight you really want to listen because open source contributions are really cool and important.
Just forgot to cast my screen.
Whoops.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, temporary pause here while we just work with the screencasting. In the meantime, the live casters are going to be hearing a lot of my voice. Cool. Because tonight's speaker is Ember.js's very own Jen Weber, also an alumni of General Assembly, which I am also an alumni of, and general all-around extremely awesome person. She will be leading Intro to Open Source and Contributors Workshop. Before we keep going, let's see if I can make this do the thing. No, sorry, hang on. I'll get this. Space.
Will do it.
Okay. I'm so maybe. Come on. This is slight.
Sorry, my computer.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a developer. Really. Okay. Before we go any further, brief introduction to the code of conduct. Here, there is one. It's available at emberjs.com/guidelines. To summarize it very broadly, 2 things. 1, be the kind of person that Mr. Rogers would want you to be. And also be the kind of person who could lift Thor's hammer at this kind of meetup. So, you know, don't be a jerk, but try to be a good person. It's a little more detailed than that, but the full guidelines are on the website. And if you need to contact somebody about if you're feeling uncomfortable, you can always come to one of us, myself, Jen. And you can always email the organizers at Boston Ember JS about meetup-related issues. And if it's an Ember-related issue, you can hit up the ombudsman at emberjs.com. Now, let's see if I can make this. Nope, still not doing it right. Okay. Thank you to our host tonight, which is Shift Analytics, which thank you, Boris, for introducing them. And thank you all for coming, since it looks like most of you are from Shift, which is pretty cool. One of these days I will get it working.
It's probably my laptop.
No, I don't think it's
from
real.
2011. I'm pretty used to it.
Oh yeah, no, it's a me problem, not a laptop problem.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So there is a Slack community for the Boston Ember community. It's up here. There is a Twitter, and there's a really cool Ember Times newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to in the world. All of you. I'm not kidding. And the Ember Weekly newsletter. So for all your Ember needs, if you want to reach out to somebody, if you're having a problem, if you're like, wait a second, what is this? What even is this? You could probably find help somewhere around there. One of these years, I'm going to get it. Okay, there we go.
I can talk about this one.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that would be really awesome.
At most of our Ember meetups, we do a thing called Ask Ember Boston, which is where people can get up, and if they have a question of something that they want to know more about and ask the community, we make a space for that. Since we're going to spend some time chatting and doing workshop stuff, I think we'll get to that first, but before we all leave, there'll be a chance for people to ask their questions and like say hey and exchange usernames and whatever to help you get unstuck or get some new ideas for your project.
Is that the last of it?
Mostly, I think.
Okay, let's see if I can undo this. Oh, nope. I am so sorry.
Well, I'm not even sure how.
I'm doing some kind of. I think I got it. I got it. No, wait. What?
All right.
I'm gonna do a DJ session here.
We'll close this and
Okay.
we'll scroll. I'm not sure what it's doing.
Well, if we. Oh, the announcements. That's what.
Yeah.
That's what was up. Ember Camp. So apparently there is an Ember Camp on September 21st in Chicago. Which do you want to tell us about? The coolness of Ember Camp?
Ember Camp's going to be great. It is the first of its kind happening in Chicago, and it's going to be a meetup on the smaller side. A few hundred people, so a good chance to really network and get to know people and learn some cool Ember stuff. I'll be speaking there, and I think there's a handful of other people from the Boston community who are planning to go.
So nice. Everybody go to Chicago. There's also apparently we need speakers for the next meetup, which is going to be in October. I believe any Ember related topic, any level.
Also, general JavaScript developer topics are also welcome.
That works. I mean, you can. I mean, hand puppets aren't obligatory, but you can do that. But yeah, basically anything that is related, even tangentially to Ember, would be very welcome. So again, please contact Jen or myself, probably Jen, if that's needed.
I can talk about these last two
Oh,
points
okay,
too.
yeah, in that case.
So a couple of things. We usually do a core team panel in the fall. I need to schedule that date, but we can expect that to be in November. And the Boston Ember meetup can happen at a variety of locations, like tonight's. Most frequently, we're at Salsify in downtown Boston, and they just moved offices. So heads up, if you're coming to a future Ember meetup, don't go to their old offices when you come. So, cool.
I think that's. I think I'd better leave the floor to you then.
Right.
Without further ado, the open source workshop. Everybody, get Jen Weber a hand, please.
Cool. All right, everybody. So I'm gonna keep this fairly short because what I really want to do is create some time and space for everyone to, those of you who've brought laptops at least, to work on getting familiar with open source, contributing to it, or like maybe you have a project you're already working on and you want somebody else's eyes on it, that this is going to be a time and space for you. But there's a few things that I want to go through about open source, and I've got a couple questions for the group as well. And they're not rhetorical questions. I actually do want to know like what people's experience levels are, because I will tailor what I say to meet those needs. So if you have, if you're the maintainer of an open source project, please raise your hand. Yeah, air high five, Ed. If you have contributed to an open source project before, please raise your hand. Okay. Cool. And if you always meant to contribute and you know how, but you just haven't done it yet. And if you are like, what even would I do? Okay, cool. All right, so it looks like we've got a pretty good mix of what even would I do and people who have at least a little bit of experience. So we'll cover all of those bases. The first thing that I want to share with you about open source is that behind every open source project are some really awesome people who dedicate their time, whether it's their work time or their volunteering. It's a passion project. And so I find a lot of people are intimidated. They're like, oh no, what if like my code's not good enough? My skills aren't good enough. What if somebody judges me? I want you to think of these happy faces. This is one of the teams that I work with the most. And imagine like these are the people who are going to respond to your questions and requests. I can't speak for all open source projects, but at least for the ones that I'm a part of, we really welcome people getting involved and using it as a learning experience and like helping out. And we expect that people are going to have 1,000 questions. So if you had a job as a developer, then you know that that first week, there's no way that you don't ask 1,000 questions. If you're not asking 1,000 questions, like, you know, you're maybe missing out on some important information. And joining, working on an open source project is no different. It's something that's expected as part of the process. All right, so we're gonna, our activity is gonna be us working on things later tonight, but I'm gonna go over how to get involved as a contributor. We're gonna walk through a typical Git workflow, because that's one of the things that is sometimes the hardest part of getting started. This is an old schedule. We're not going to be working on stuff for 2 hours, but at the end, we'll do a quick wrap up and see how we did. So you're welcome to try to use that time later for actually contributing to something. You're also welcome to just kind of poke around and explore and research and talk to other people. So the time is however you want to use it. All right, so first things first, what is open source contributing? A lot of people think that it's pushing code, it's making commits. And in reality, in order to contribute to open source projects, sometimes it's as simple as giving your opinion and offering a comment, opening an issue, helping somebody else out on Slack. So who here is already familiar with Ember? You know what it is, you've used it before. Okay, so for everyone who's not, Ember is a front-end framework that's been around for quite a while, and as a result, we've been able to develop some processes that help facilitate communication and development so that the project goes the direction that the community wants it to go, as opposed to just like the wishes of one company. The way that we do that is something called RFCs, requests for comments. And this process has been picked up by a number of other large projects, like I think Rust uses it. Did React pick it up? Does anyone know? I think maybe they did. And basically, this is a chance for anyone in the community to weigh in on what direction you want things to go. And adding those comments is a type of contributing. Obviously, there's making pull requests, fixing bugs, adding features, updating things. But there's also stuff like writing articles, writing documentation, helping with the infrastructure. So for example, if you really like styling, for example, CSS, you might think like, what am I going to do with my CSS to contribute to an open source project? A lot of them think like, I don't know, Moment, for example, Moment.js, it's one of those libraries that a lot of people use for parsing dates and times. They have a front-end website, and somebody's got to make it readable and approachable. The same goes for Ember. We have actually like, I don't know, 10 websites, something like that. And there's all sorts of different help that's needed in that regard. There's also Q&A, helping out other people, opening issues, contributing to newsletters, and then doing like you're doing here tonight, which is coming to events. So how do you actually find an issue? So I'm going to be sharing a couple links later on that give you a quick list of GitHub issues. But basically, the biggest challenge in finding an issue to work on is because there's so many. It's overwhelming. If you just do a random search for open issues on open source projects, you're going to come up with a list that you don't have a chance of sorting through. So my recommendation is to think of a project that you like, something that's helped you out in the past, or something that you want to learn. Because contributing to a project is one of the best ways to actually learn it. Narrow down from there. You can look for issues that have tags on them. I'll show you some examples of this later, such as help wanted or good for new contributors. And those are the things where the problem is maybe small and contained enough that you can use it as your first introduction to that project. And we'll walk through an example of that together shortly. Let's see. Another thing here that's important for success is to make good use of the communication channels that you have. So that means for a lot of projects, they might have a chat. Ember has a chat group called on Slack. We also have message boards. And then sometimes if someone's working on a hard problem that's outside of the Ember ecosystem, there's still tons of people that they can ask for help. And it's way more fun when you have someone else to work with. Let's see. We talked about issue labels. Okay, so since we have quite a few people in the room who are totally new to contributing to open source, we're going to walk through some examples of what that workflow actually looks like. All right. Okay, so to understand open source, first it helps to know what it is. Open source projects are those that are shared for, the public code base is shared for other people to use. Sometimes they fall under different kinds of licenses. Sometimes there's restrictions about whether you can use them for for-profit projects or things like that. But ultimately what it is people sharing code because it's helpful to others. From opensource.com, a global community can create beyond the capabilities of any one individual. It multiplies effort and shares the work. Together, we can do more. So particularly if you're a JavaScript developer, every single day that you're working, you're in some way working with hundreds or thousands of other people who've helped build up the tools that you're using. So why might you want to spend your time helping to build up some of those tools too? So the first thing is it's really satisfying to create something awesome and have it be useful to other people. You might be motivated to fix a thing that annoys you. I would say that's probably the majority of my pull requests that don't have to do with Ember things are like, I found a bug, or I found some piece of documentation that I was like, found this really hard to understand, or it would be really great if the version number of this dependency was higher so it would stop throwing security warnings at me. Well, resolve the security problem, I should say. It's not about the warning. So fix a thing that annoys you. It's a chance to learn from other developers. So I learned to code a little over 2 years ago, and one of the reasons why I got involved in open source projects was because I had never worked on anything that was in production, and our team was still pretty new. The company had only been around for a handful of months at the point that I had joined. And so I knew that we had a lot of learning to do about what best practices might be as an engineering organization. And I was like really desperate to improve my skills. So I had the chance to work with some really experienced, awesome developers, work on production applications, work on things that are continuous integration, continuous deployment, aka CI/CD projects. I worked on things that had excellent test suites, things that needed excellent test suites. I got to see the whole picture, and those lessons helped me every day in my day job. You also get a way better understanding of the tool. So in the case of Ember, a lot of people think of it as this huge, big, scary code base. And in reality, a lot of the code base is like readable functions that are in their own files. And once you go there and you look, it is a whole lot easier to think like, if I can't find something in the documentation, I know I can go take a peek at the source code, and it might actually be pretty approachable. That lets me go so much faster than asking everybody if they know exactly how this or that thing works. Another thing is to build your portfolio. Now, open source is volunteering, and it's often part of people's day jobs, but if you are working on it as a side project, you're volunteering, and not everyone has the privilege and ability to do that kind of volunteering. But if you do, it's something that can help you out so that when you're in that interview and someone says, can you tell me an example of the hardest problem that you solved, or a time that you worked well with other people or whatever, you have this like really rich set of experiences that you can draw from. And another thing is to pay it forward. So the only way that open source works is if some people from time to time who aren't involved jump in and try to do something. So I ran npm install on the tiniest little project earlier today. And at the bottom, it's a little message that like, you know, your project has this many dependencies done by 900 contributors. So if all of those people, they're probably not all the core maintainers of those projects. They're probably people who popped in and fixed a thing here or there. And then together, all of that builds into something that's cool and something that helps drive software companies. So another misconception about open source is that you have to have some sort of like expert level achievement. Like the people who are doing open source, they're so good at it, and my measly coding is not going to be good enough. And I really like this quote. Hopefully this doesn't scare you off of a job, but it says, I'm always amazed during an interview when people tell me they aren't good enough to contribute to open source code for free, yet they want me to pay them to write source code on the job. This is a symptom of imposter syndrome. So you can do it. It's a really great practice ground. If you haven't had a job yet, try out your skills. If you've been doing it for a while, embrace the opportunity to learn something new. Another misconception about open source is a lot of times people think that they're going to show up and get insulted So this is actually one of my very good friends reacting to something that I didn't know. And this is because he knows me really well and not because of, like, oh no, you're so bad at this. It's more like, oh no, why don't we fix up that misunderstanding? So, keep an open mind. People are there to help you out. I mentioned this before. It's also helpful to use the buddy system. Find somebody to work on the project with. The next thing is asking lots of questions. We talked about that as well. This is my first pull request. And this comment was for making like one line of changes. And I asked like 20 more questions after this. And that's normal. The next thing is being kind to yourself. So the expectation, it's sort of like, this is how we see ourselves. So for those of you at the back who can't read this, it's an XKCD comic that says, keep in mind that I'm self-taught, so my code might be a little messy. Someone says, let me see, I'm sure it's fine. And she says, it's like someone took a transcript of a couple arguing at IKEA and made random edits until it compiled without errors. So this is what we think people are going to think of when they look at our code. And instead, I said, am I doing this right? What about this? What about that? And they said something like, oh, it's actually cool. We're just mostly happy to have the help on the project. The next rule is to pick something small. We talked about this a little bit earlier, so I'm going to skip that. The next thing is to share your interests. After you got your feet wet and maybe made a pull request or something, talk with somebody who's involved in the project and let them know what you want to learn, what you want to get out of it. You don't have to stick to just the things that are part of your normal skill set. So if you're really good at front-end development, or you feel like you've got an outlet for learning that, and you think okay, I want to know more about back-end development, that's great. You don't have to do the thing that you're strongest at. It's a great chance to learn and get better at something totally different. All right, so we're going to walk through the different steps that you need to actually work in GitHub. I'm going to share a link at the end as well. This is all written up as a step-by-step guide that you can walk through yourself later. So you'll have this as a resource. So the first thing to do is to create a new issue. Actually, I want to ask at this point, again, totally honest, is there anyone here who hasn't used GitHub before? Great. Cool. Is there anyone here who doesn't know what an issue is? Okay. So we'll skip a little bit past that. But creating an issue and declaring what you want to do, or commenting on an issue and saying what you are interested in helping out with, is the first step. Always do this before you open a pull request, because you don't want to spend a ton of time coding and then find out that, oh, actually, that issue was already solved in this other thing and we just forgot to close it. So it's sort of a safeguard for protecting your own time and an opportunity to ask questions. This is the part that is different than how you might interact with code in your day job. The next thing you're going to do is make a fork. The way I think of a fork is it's like a copy of the project that is safe for you to make whatever changes you want to without affecting the parent project, but it still has a relationship to that parent project. So you're going to get your own copy of this repository that gets created once you click fork. And then just how you would clone any other repository, you can grab this link and download this project. If you're not familiar with Git from the command line, there are, and Git being, Git is the tool that helps you keep track of your versions as you're working. And it also helps you do things like download other people's projects. Git from the command line can be a little tough, but there are little like desktop applications that you can use instead if you're more comfortable with that. So you use that link to download the project. And even though it's your copy of the project, you still want to do, you still want to create a branch. So when you create a branch in GitHub, basically it gives you a way to always compare your work to the work that was done previously. If you don't create a branch, it can get a little bit confusing in the future because it's a little unclear whether you're looking at your own work or you're looking at the work that was there before yours. So I always like to create a branch. The next thing is, let's say that you have a lot of ambition and you think like, all right, I'm gonna help with this project. I'm gonna solve this bug. I'm gonna fix this documentation. And then you don't come back to it for a really long time. And now your fork, your copy of the project is so far out of date. What do you actually do? So in Git, this is covered in the resources. You can add another origin. I like to call it upstream meaning like whatever the parent project was. And you can pull that down. That lets you have the updated code to work and branch from without like deleting your entire project. Then set up your developer environment. So taking a close look at the README. And if the README is insufficient and you have problems, it's okay to open an issue or ask somebody for help on the project. When you make commits, it's really handy to reference the issue number. A lot of project maintainers, there's a lot going on, whether in the project or in their personal lives. And so the more that you can help link your work to the problem you're trying to solve, the better off that'll be. So if you add the hashtag sign and the issue number that you're working on, that'll create links that other people can follow. And then you push your code up to your fork. Make sure that the tests pass, if there are tests. And then open a pull request. So this is probably really tiny for some of you in the back of the room, but this is one of the more confusing parts, I think, when you're doing your first pull request. The base fork is whatever the parent project is, whatever the public thing that everybody else is working on. And you almost always want to open a pull request to the master branch. The next section here, head fork, that's your copy of things. And compare is the branch name that you want to, that you've saved your work on. Then what I want you to expect to happen is to be asked for revisions. So if the maintainers pop into the project and they say, hey, can you change this? Hey, can you fix that? You should expect that. It doesn't mean that you necessarily did something wrong. It means that there's something you need to learn. There's something that wasn't communicated. This happens all the time. It's not a bad thing to be asked to make changes. Sometimes, oh wait, not that yet. Sometimes pull requests don't get merged in either. And I want you to promise yourself now, if that happens, you're not gonna let yourself feel too bad about it. Maybe you feel a little bit bad because you're like, oh man, I did this work and it didn't go anywhere. But it's not like, you know, it's a normal thing. So for those of you who have contributed to open source before, raise your hand if you've had one of your pull requests closed and not merged. Okay. Oh, wow. Good track record. All right. This is just you and me. And am I right? It's like a thing. It's just a thing that happens some percentage of the time. And while you're learning,
it's probably going to happen to you more, and it's okay. But if
you can always still run the code yourself.
That's true. That's true. But if all goes well, then it gets merged. Yay! And then maybe if it's something like an NPM package, it'll be included in a release, and then your code's going to help out other people, and hopefully you learned a thing. So the theme here is that you already have almost everything you need to get started with an open source project. And you are going to have to ask a lot of questions along the way, but you've totally got this. So I said I'd share a couple resources to help get started here. We've got about 45 minutes that we can spend on open workshop time. If you don't have a computer with you, this is a good chance to buddy up with somebody or you know, walk around and see what else other people are working on. But I've got a list here of different things. Where did my list go? Oh, here it is. Oh. Okay. Oh, my computer's mad. All right, so I've got a couple things to help you get started. So firstly, this URL here, tinyurl.com/ec-instructions. This has step-by-step how to get involved, how to get started with an open source project. It has everything from the Git workflow to links to help you find something to help out with. And again, things to help out with can take the form of anything from adding a clarifying sentence to a README to adding some code to a project. There's also this, which this is the debut of this project. I'm actually going to open this up in the browser. So one of the contributors to some Ember resources, his name is Frederick, made this awesome website where if you want to help out with an Ember-related thing, you can visit this page and see a list of things that are labeled in such a way that they're inviting other people to participate. So help wanted, good for new contributors, good first issues, all of those things land here in this list, and you can open them up. It's divided into Ember Core, which is the core code base, and then Ember Learning, which is a lot of issues that have to do with the documentation and the public websites. So you can check this out, and if you have any feedback about this website, this is the first time that it's being used. So send that along to me, and I'll make sure that that gets back to the creators. There's also a repository called, let me find it on my own GitHub. There's also a repository that I made that's called our open source contributions, which the purpose of this repository is if you're going through step by step and trying to learn Git and trying to learn GitHub, and you want somewhere totally safe where you can open and close issues and open and close pull requests and like break everything and actually see what it looks like when you make those pull requests, that's what this exists for. This is meant to be a sandbox. So you can play around here and try out all of those things like opening pull requests without being worried that it's gonna like break something. So before we get started with the next section, I wanna stop here and ask what questions people have. No questions. Yeah.
So I've always gotten to the point where I've had ideas for issues that I want to submit, and I never quite pulled it through. But at what point after you submit the issue, you feel confident changing your code, maybe following up on pull requests?
That's a really good question. So what I think the trickiest thing is that all projects are developed at different paces. So for example, the things that I work on, if someone opens an issue or a pull request, it's not unusual that it sits for like a week or so before someone gets to it, because most of the team is weekend warriors, not people who get to do it as part of their day jobs. So I recommend a rule of thumb is like a week. If you don't hear anything in a week, maybe add another message or something. But you can also look at, let me think, what's a good repository here? Let's look at Super Rentals. You can also look at some of the statistics about the project in order to kind of get a sense of how quick it moves. So for example, if we look at this repository, we can see that it's pretty slow. And so you shouldn't feel bad about pinging in like a week, you know, like maybe you need to get people's attention, but you also shouldn't expect that someone's going to get back to you right away, because it's the nature of the project. Whereas if we look at Ember.js itself, for example, let's look here. On the flip side, this is a super active project with a ton of code moving. And so it might be the case where your idea is kind of like lost in the shuffle because there's so much happening. And so looking at this for a minute is helpful. And then also looking at who typically handles those types of pull requests and how often they're doing stuff is really helpful. So definitely, though, open issues. Huh? Yeah, please do.
From a maintenance perspective, just add a little color. One of the cultural things to pick up and do that stuff is really trying to find the boundary, which is not a hard boundary, between like a feature request and a bug. Okay? Sometimes it's really good as a bug because like the whole program goes on. It's probably not supposed to do that. So depending on how confident you are it's really a bug and you're not just asking for a whole new thing. If you're pretty confident it's a bug, you just need a crash. That's a really good sign that if you can come up with a solution, go directly to the pull request. You see a way to make the bug go away, make the PR, and then even if it turns out there's like we're missing some other context and your solution is not the perfect solution, it's just as good as an issue, maybe even better than just an issue.
That's true.
Of course, like well-written issues are also incredibly valuable, and that's probably your first place to go to if you don't think you know how to solve it, or if you're not sure whether you're asking for a feature or a bug. And if it's a feature, projects differ a lot. So if it's, for the most part, if it's a feature you want opening an issue is probably fine. If you look at the guidelines in a project like Ember that's really big and really active and cares a lot about stability, it's not really enough to just discuss on an issue if you're at one whole new feature. We have a dedicated process for that. You'll be asked nicely to go open an issue first to discuss on the Ember RFCs repo, and then if that actually is making sense, there's that template to fill out to suggest your changes, because you're going to change the way all Ember apps work in the future. It's kind of it affects a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
Process as well.
Yeah.
Most projects is going to have to initially ask about it.
The other thing I'll add to that too is that there are a lot of good ideas for different open source projects, and there are frequently way less hours available than it would take to implement them. And so just in terms of expectations, if you propose a feature, a whole bunch of other people might chime in and say like, yeah, that's a thing I want too. And then great, you have a group that you can work with in order to implement that feature. But it also happens sometimes that like, yeah, that's great, we'd love to do it, but it needs someone to actually do the work. That's really common as well. What other questions?
I'm not sure.
to us like all of your environment for this Ember like contribution, like if you want to do a contribution, how was the development, how to set up that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for Ember, if you already have JavaScript or like an NPM set up on your machine, which is very common for JavaScript developers, to get started working with Ember is really just like npm install Ember CLI, which is the tool that you use to build, you create your app structure and can actually build apps with it. So that's if you want to become, you yourself want to build an Ember app, that's how you would get started, is with the Ember CLI. If you want to actually contribute to Ember, that's where you're going to want to take a look at the README. But for the most part, the workflow is to clone the repository and then npm install or yarn install. And you mentioned you work on mostly Java projects, so
yeah,
it's a little different. But
for this user develop the Ember application, I know that because that's a kind of a lot of documentation and probably not here just to see how you can contribute to that.
Yeah. So the Ember itself has a contributing guide here. Sorry, I know it's really small. That walks through a lot of the different steps for contributing to the repository. Everything from how to report issues and propose features, like Ed was suggesting, and how to actually run and build the projects, how to run the tests. Everything is laid out here. I'll say a lot of JavaScript projects are much easier to get started with in the sense that like they're smaller, but everything here for Ember is pretty well documented because there's so many people who are working on it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this presentation, and we'll jump into the open time. So for the open time, again, I'll be walking around. Ed's here. There's a bunch of other people here who contributed. Christian, who know a thing or two, and we can help you look for issues or answer any questions that you have. So if you want to dive in, you can. A couple things before we all divide up and start working on stuff. So firstly, this the Ember meetup is the result of a bunch of different people helping out, kind of like how open source projects are the result of a bunch of different people helping out. So I want to go ahead and take the time now to thank those people. So Lenny, who was our MC tonight, Shift, thanks Lenny, Shift and Steph and the whole team, they actually reached out to me and said, hey, we're interested in helping to host an event, and that's really super awesome. So we appreciate them a lot. Frederick, who made that dashboard, I'll put that link up so that you can use it. Ed, who is an all-around open source mentor and offered to do ride shares and things like that. And then there's a whole bunch of people who actually work to get some issues together that are good for new contributors for this workshop, as well as some other events that are coming up. So a big thanks to them as well. So here's the links. Open it up. The best thing to do is just dive in and give it a try. So thank you very much for coming tonight. And again, we'll all be around to do some open workshop time. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen. Who wants to work on something? I'm ready. Yeah? Oh, Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Good. It's an important thing.
Anybody get that?
Right. I'm gonna put that up on the screen. Actually, I can type it into that slide there,
that's very smart.
and then people will be able to see it. So, if anyone needs Wi-Fi, I'm about to put that link up here. Oh, my computer is struggling. Oh.
Great stuff.
Oh, yeah, ready to share that?
Yeah.
So, what, yeah, what's
I got a tree. Look over here. All right. Yeah.
I love that cat background. It's my favorite. Bye, everyone who tuned in. Thank you very much.